Strandtarsia is a style of colourwork knitting that combines stranded colourwork and intarsia into one technique. Normally, when working in tarsia, you would work up to the edge of your motif, twist the two colours together, change colour and work all the way across your motif in your new colour or colours to the end. And then you would twist your colours together here and you would start with a new piece of main colour yarn. So you would normally have at least 3 yarns going at once. However, with this style of motif, what you'll see is that there are lots of little patches of the main colour going all the way across it. And so it actually makes more sense to strand the yarn colour not in use across the back of the work. You can see what that looks like here. What you'll notice is that although the patterning ends approximately here, the contrast colour yarn is actually carried further across the side of the work. And I'll show you why we do this. I'm starting from row 21 of my chart. And so I start the row with 6 main colour stitches. So for now, I'll leave the yarn that I'm not using just dangling loose. Now what you'll notice is that on the previous row, I had actually caught the yarn that I'm about to use now into the back of the work, a few stitches in front of where I knew that next stitch would be. The reason to do that is to avoid holes. You can also twist your yarns together at the beginning of the work, but because you're going to be stranding the yarn not in use across the back of the work throughout the piece, it makes more sense for your edges to work in the same way. This is called anchoring. So I'm going to pick up my contrast colour yarn and I need to work 2 stitches and then I need to work a main colour yarn. Just as with the stranded colour work, what I'm going to do throughout is always hold my 2 yarns consistently and strand the contrast colour, when it's not being used, underneath the main colour. So you can see that the principle is just the same as with stranded colour work. I'm now 3 stitches before the end of the colour work on row 21, and so I'm just going to finish that little bit off. And then show you what happens next. So what I could do is leave my contrast colour yarn here, because on the next row I'm actually going to be starting it at the same point. However, if I do that, then I will need to twist my yarns together at this point. But more importantly, the first stitch will be pulling against the stitch below it. So the tension at the very edge of the colour work won't look very even. If instead I work another 2 stitches past where I know my colour work will be on the next row, and then twist my 2 colours together, I will work to the end of the row. When I come to work the contrast colour on the next row, it will be tensioned more evenly and I won't have to twist it together. Again, I've got 6 stitches to work in my main yarn. Now I'm going to work my contrast colour for this next stitch. And as you can see, the yarn is coming from behind the stitch. This means that the tension will be more even and I don't have to twist my 2 colours together. It's like doing a mini piece of stranding, because you're actually stranding your yarn across the back of the work. You can see that quite easily here before you get to the first stitch that you're actually knitting with it. I now have 4 stitches left of my motif on this row. What I know is that on the following row, my motif starts 1 stitch later on this stitch here, the one before the green. And so I don't want to anchor it 2 stitches away from the edge because that will be too far. I want to anchor it 2 stitches away from its new starting point. So I'm going to work my 4 stitches in my contrast colour, then I'll work 1 stitch in the green, and then I'll anchor my contrast colour yarn so that it's 2 stitches away from where it needs to start on the following row. First I'll work my 4 stitches. Then 1 main colour stitch, and as you can see the main colour yarn always comes from above. Now I'm going to twist my yarns together and then continue working in my main colour. When I go to work in my contrast colour next row, which will be this stitch here, my yarn will again be 2 stitches away, anchored and ready so that I don't need to twist it together at the edge. You can see that I've done this throughout on this piece, and what it does is it creates a nice even edge to the work. There's no distortion of stitches at the edge, which is what you would normally get at the beginning and end of an intarsia motif. Looking at the back of the finished motif, you can see where I've been anchoring my yarn all the way along the edges of the motif to ensure consistent tension. You can also see that I've stranded consistently to ensure that my colour dominance is correct, with the contrast colour standing out slightly more. If you have any questions about Strandtarsia, please feel free to leave them in the comments.